secret. Life here was predictable. Farmers rose before dawn, traders haggled under the sun, and at dusk, families gathered under mango trees to listen to tales passed down for generations. But lately, even the wind seemed to whisper in fear. The first death had been written off as a tragic accident. The girl, Ngozi, had gone missing one evening and was found the next morning in the village square. Eyes wide open, skin cold as stone, and with 2 sharp marks on her neck. The elders muttered prayers. The herbalists offered concoctions. Chief Hidado called for the hunters to comb the forests. But no snake was found. Then it happened again and again. 5 women in 3 moons, each as young and vibrant as the next, each left in the same eerie position, each bearing the same mark. The stories around the fires grew darker. Some blamed a demon that fed on beauty. Others whispered of an ancient curse. Mothers began locking their daughters indoors. Laughter faded from the streets. Obom, once lively and colorful, now held its breath. But not everyone was afraid. Chijioke, the town's most admired builder, remained untouched by the fear that gripped Obom. His house, bigger than most, sat at the edge of town, near the forest path. He was tall, with the kind of smile that made women forget their worries, and the kind of confidence that made men respect or envy him. He was the one who helped build the new church roof. He was the one who carried sacks of yam for old women at the market. He never raised his voice, always laughed softly, and never seemed to hurry. He didn't need to. Chijioke's presence was a breeze, cool, gentle, and dangerously persuasive. Every girl in Obom dreamed of walking beside him, and though many did, none of them stayed long. A few were never seen again. But nobody questioned him. How could they? He was perfect, too perfect. Then came Amaka. She arrived on a cloudy Harmattan morning, wrapped in a red scarf in silence. She claimed she had come to care for her aunt, Akiyu, a yam farmer on the outskirts, but her eyes held something older than duty, grief polished by resolve. From her first step into Obom, Amaka was different. She didn't fawn over Chijioke. She didn't linger at the well for village gossip. She spoke when necessary, watched everything, and smiled rarely. It unsettled people. It intrigued Chijioke. He first saw her at the marketplace, her wrapper tied tight, her arms strong from farm work. Their eyes met. She didn't blush. She didn't look away. She didn't smile. She just blinked, slowly, calmly. It was the beginning of a quiet war. As fear continued to sink deeper into the roots of Obom, something else was stirring, something that had traveled with Amaka all the way from her village. It rested in the folds of her wrapper, no bigger than her hand, a flute carved from the sacred ukpi tree, humming faintly with ancestral power. Amaka hadn't come to Obom for a visit. She had come for justice. Amaka settled into life in Obom with the quiet grace of someone used to hiding sharp things behind soft smiles. She helped her aunt on the farm, carried yams to the market, and listened more than she spoke. But her eyes, always watching, always measuring, never missed a thing. Especially not Chijioke. She saw how he moved through the village like a prince in a forgotten kingdom, how women lit up when he passed, giggling behind their hands, how men nodded in respect or stepped aside when he entered a room. He was the golden son of Obom, flawless, admired, trusted. Amaka knew better. Nena had described him once, with the stars in her voice. He's not like anyone I've ever met, Maka. When he looks at you, you forget everything else. That had been just a month before she was found dead in her village, in the same eerie way as the women in Obom. 2 marks, no witnesses, no answers. But Amaka had found answers. Answers only Mama Ifura, the oracle, could give. She remembered the words clearly. The snake is not just his weapon, it is his curse, passed down through blood, fed with beauty, unleashed with a whistle. To defeat it, you must let him believe he's already won. That's why Amaka let Chijioke see her at the well. That's why she allowed herself to walk near him at the market. That's why she offered only politeness when he tried to charm her. And that's why he became obsessed. Chijioke was used to women falling with a glance, but Amaka? She didn't giggle, didn't glance, didn't soften. Her silence wounded his pride. Her restraint felt like rejection. He started seeking her out, under the guise of small talk. At the yam stall, "You always carry too much for one so fine." At the stream, "Let me walk with you, a woman like you should not be alone." Amaka responded with short nods and steady eyes, never rude, never flirtatious, but always distant enough to sting. And it drove Chijioke mad. What he didn't know was that Amaka was baiting him. She had learned from Mama Ifure not just how to protect herself, but how to study him. She noted the patterns, how he charmed his targets for days, then withdrew suddenly, only to strike under the cover of darkness. She watched him closely, marked the nights when the village square grew colder with silence and death. She also watched where he walked on those nights. Always toward the edge of the bush, always back just before dawn. Always alone. The flute remained tied inside her wrapper, wrapped in red cloth. She hadn't touched it yet. It wasn't time. Chijioke had to believe she was softening. That was the key. To beat a snake, you didn't strike first. You waited for it to strike. One evening, as orange light painted the rooftops of Obom, Chijioke approached her as she returned from the market. "You've ignored me long enough, Amaka," he said, his smile gentle but tight. She tilted her head. "I've been busy. Let me carry your basket." She hesitated, just a breath, then handed it to him. Chijioke smiled wider, unaware he had just taken the first step into a carefully laid trap. From that evening on, Chijioke began to change his rhythm. He no longer chased Amaka through the dusty paths of Obom with practiced lines and idle compliments. Instead, he became quiet, watchful. He greeted her when they met, but never lingered. He passed her in the market, but didn't speak. And that silence echoed louder than any word. Amaka noticed. It was part of the game, the withdrawal. This was the moment every other woman had mistaken for respect or mystery. But she knew better. This was when he measured their curiosity, waited for their loneliness, tested their resolve. She didn't flinch. Days passed. The town moved in its slow, fearful rhythm. Another woman, a visitor passing through on her way to Ganya's, was found lifeless in the square. The sixth. The town mourned. Chief Gidado held another prayer. Herbalists burned stronger herbs. The hunters sharpened their blades. Still, no one suspected Chijioke. How could they? He had been seen in the church that night, helping set up benches, pouring palm wine with the elders, laughing with the pastor. He always had an alibi. But Amaka had started putting the pieces together. The deaths followed no visible pattern. The women were all different, except in one thing. Every single one had interacted with Chijioke, briefly, casually, sometimes only once. That was enough. Amaka's aunt, A.K.U., warned her one night as they pounded yam in the open courtyard. "Chijioke is like fire, my child. Warm from a distance, deadly up close." Amaka met her aunt's gaze. "I am not afraid of fire, Ma." That night, Amaka cleaned the flute in secret. She whispered Mama Ifure's words over it like a prayer. She placed it under her mat, right beside her, and didn't sleep. Not much. The next day, as the sun melted into the horizon, Chijioke found her again. He was standing by the baobab tree near her aunt's farm, arms crossed, his smile soft but cautious. "It's been a while," he said. "Would you walk with me?" Amaka studied him for a heartbeat, then nodded. "Yes, I'll walk." As they moved through the quiet fields, Amaka matched his pace, her expression unreadable. They talked, light, casual things, the weather, the harvest, the stars. He told a joke. She smiled, just once. That was all he needed. The next day, he brought her a small bundle of mangoes. The day after, a smooth bracelet carved from ebony. When he asked her if she would visit his hut for a quiet evening, she paused only for a moment, then said, "Tomorrow." He grinned. "I'll be waiting." As he turned and walked away, his back straight and proud, Amaka felt her chest tighten, not with fear, but with memory. She saw Nena again, laughing, blushing, telling her about someone special, someone who made her feel seen, someone who looked just like Chijioke. "I'm ready," Amaka whispered to the night. "For her, for all of them." She had baited the snake long enough. Now it was time to trap him. The night was thick with silence. Obom, cloaked in shadows and the low hum of distant crickets, seemed to hold its breath as Amaka walked the winding path to Chijioke's hut. The moon followed her like a quiet witness, casting long fingers of silver across the red earth. Her steps were steady, but inside her wrapper, her fingers gripped the sacred ukpi flute. The smooth wood hummed faintly against her skin, as if aware of what was to come. Chijioke greeted her at the door with that same slow, confident smile. He wore a white shirt, freshly pressed, and his hut smelled of herbs, palm wine, and faint cologne. He had laid out 2 wooden stools and a calabash of wine. "Amaka," he said softly, "I've looked forward to this." She gave a quiet nod and stepped inside. The hut was dim, lit by a single oil lamp. Its shadows danced on the walls. At the back was a mat, neatly arranged, and a folded wrapper, carefully placed, like bait waiting for a trap. They talked. About nothing. About everything. Chijioke poured her wine and watched her closely. His voice was smooth, deep, like a calm river hiding crocodiles. He leaned in now and then, brushing her hand lightly with his fingers, measuring her reactions. But Amaka didn't flinch. She sipped her wine slowly. Her body was relaxed, her face open, her mind sharp. Then came the question. "Do you know?" Chijioke asked, voice barely above a whisper, "the difference between a man's manhood and a snake?" Amaka tilted her head slightly. Her heart thudded once, but she smiled faintly. "I suppose you're about to show me." That pleased him. He stood slowly, moving toward the mat, with the air of a hunter who knew the kill was already his. "Don't be afraid," he whispered, untying his wrapper. "It only hurts for a moment." He began to whistle. The sound was low and eerie, almost beautiful in its strangeness, a melody that coiled itself around the room like smoke. Amaka's breath caught as the shadows shifted. Then it appeared. From beneath his wrapper, slithering with a slow, deliberate grace, a serpent emerged, black as coal, its eyes glinting red in the flickering light. It curled around his leg, then began its slow ascent toward her. Amaka froze, not in fear, but in timing. The snake hissed, poised to strike. She reached beneath her wrapper and pulled out the ukpi flute. Before the serpent could lunge, she blew sharply. A piercing, high-pitched note sliced through the air. The snake halted, its body trembling. It turned, confused, its tongue flicking wildly. She blew again. This time the sound was longer, vibrating with power. The snake uncoiled from Chijioke's leg and slithered toward her instead. Chijioke stepped back, panic breaking through his mask of calm. "What are you doing?" he stammered. "Stop it!" But Amaka stood firm, her eyes locked on the serpent now coiling at her feet, like a worshipper before a priestess. "You're not the only one who knows how to summon it," she said coldly. Chijioke stumbled. How do you know?" "I know because Nena told me. Not with words, with her death." She blew one final note. The snake rose, coiled, then launched at Chijioke. He screamed once, before the fangs sank into his neck. The venom acted fast. His body jerked, then dropped. His eyes wide, staring, unblinking, lifeless. Amaka stood over him, chest heaving, flute still in hand. It ends tonight. The rooster had not yet crowed when the first cry echoed through Obom. A boy fetching firewood stumbled upon the body. Chijioke, the golden son of the village, now cold and crumpled in the center of the village square. His eyes were wide, glassy, his skin pale. 2 unmistakable puncture wounds scarred his neck. Beside him lay a black serpent, coiled, dead, its head severed, and its tongue stiff in the morning air. The square filled quickly. Gasps, then silence. Then murmurs that spread like ripples through still water. What happened? Who did this? Is the curse over? Amaka stood on the edge of the crowd, wrapped in white. No makeup, no earrings, just the flute in her hand. She stepped forward. I did. The murmuring stopped. All eyes turned. I did this, she said, voice calm but ringing clear. Not out of hate, but out of duty. You mourn Chijioke, but you do not know who he was. She turned slowly, meeting their stares one by one. He was not a man. He was a hunter of women. A cursed soul who seduced and killed your daughters, your sisters, your friends. He used charm as a weapon, beauty as a veil, and a serpent as his executioner. Someone gasped. Someone else began to cry. Chief Gidado stepped forward. These are heavy words, child. They are truth, Amaka replied. Ask the oracle, ask the earth. Then she raised the flute. This, she said, was given to me by Mama Ifure of Ngaro. It controls the serpent he carried within him. I came here not to visit, but to stop him, for Nena, my sister in soul, who died with the same marks, in the same silence. I came because I could not let another girl die. There was silence. Then an old woman stepped forward, one of the village widows. My niece died 3 moons ago. We buried her with no answers. Another woman followed, then another. The village square filled with tears. The truth cracked through them like a whip, raw and sharp. But it brought with it a strange kind of healing, one forged in pain, one carved from clarity. Amaka stood tall, but inside she was unraveling. Her shoulders trembled. Her grip on the flute loosened. It was over, yes, but the cost had been great. Auntie Aku stepped beside her and took her hand. You did what no one else could. Later that day, Chijioke was buried far from the village, without ceremony. No drums, no chants, just red earth swallowing what once dazzled but destroyed. His name was spoken only once more, by Chief Gidado, as he addressed the villagers. Let this be a lesson. Not all that glitters brings light. Let us teach our sons the weight of respect, and our daughters the strength of discernment. And let us remember Amaka, not just as the girl who survived, but as the woman who saved us. From that day, Obom changed. Women no longer walked with lowered eyes. Girls were told not just to be careful, but to be wise. And Amaka's name became a tale of fire and flute, courage and clarity. The wind still carried stories through the hills of Gongola. And now, one of them belonged to her.